To turn it. Okay, we're going to open the meeting of the Community Preservation Committee at 10:04 on Tuesday, April 15th, 2025, our usual lovely building, room A. I'm going to establish a quorum. If you can hear me, you say aye. John,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Eleanor,
Aye.
Tom,
Here.
Steve.
Aye.
Okay, that's it. We've got a quorum. Neville is not here at the moment. And Joe is not here at the moment. And Jesse's not here at the moment. Okay. Somebody want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
For the record, I'm here.
And staff.
Every time.
Glenn is here.
Linda.
I always forget that part of it. I do this every day at some meetings.
It's taken for granted, I guess.
Yeah, you're just
You're
here.
running the show.
We can't do it without you, put it that way. Somebody want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, John, and is there a second?
Sure.
Tim seconded. All those in favor, John,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Eleanor? Aye. Tom,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and myself. Okay, we have minutes from March 18th. Did anybody have a chance to review them?
Yes,
Okay, you have any changes or anything? Nope. Okay, somebody want to make that motion?
so moved.
Okay, Eleanor made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
John seconded. All those in favor, Tim?
I'm abstain.
Okay, I know you weren't here. Okay. John,
Aye.
Eleanor,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Steve?
He wasn't here.
I know he wasn't,
So you
but
can't.
he has to abstain.
Abstain.
Can't tell him to abstain.
Abstain.
Okay, and I'll vote in favor. Okay. Correspondence, Diane Coombs, we did a letter between Glenn and myself and sent it off. Did anybody have any comments
I
about
think
it?
it was great.
Nice.
Really nice to know.
I added a
Covered all the
other stuff.
Thanks, Linda.
No, thank you.
I mean, she started out her career back when she was, ran for select board. I think that was the first thing she ran for. And that had to have been 25 years ago,
Oh, at least.
at least, because weren't you
It
still
was
on?
before,
Yeah,
so it was like the late eighties.
yeah, and she kept going right up to the end, because she was, as Steve will know that, she was at the meeting online representing that hysterical group and at the HDC, sounding perfectly fine. And she passed away probably exactly a week later
It was the last word.
after she was on the HDC,
Wow.
which was, right to the end. And I think she was in the hospital when she was on the HDC.
Nothing would stop her.
Nothing was gonna stop her.
Amazing.
She served.
Sure.
Okay, we asked as part of our, grant money, the funding that we gave to the Housing Trust. The first 5 million's done and they are ruling through the second 5 million. And then we also have voted another 5 million in to be voted on at town meeting in a separate warrant article from our regular funding. And we asked, when Christy and Brian were here, that they give us regular updates because we are usually the last to know as to how the money is spent. We see it in the newspaper. So we've asked that they give us regular updates as to where the grant money is going. And so Christy's here. Christy, you can go up to the table.
Board, select board, you present.
I do.
Those are informative.
Thank you.
How's baby?
Baby is great. So Frances is gonna be 4 months this week on Easter. Yeah, time's flying.
Yeah.
She's home with, her husband's taking paternity leave, so
Oh, that's great.
it's nice.
It's not like he doesn't work for himself.
He doesn't, he works at a Tucker Bank.
That's right.
Yeah, my brother-in-law's for intolerance.
Okay.
Yeah, so thank you guys for having me here today. I was talking with Glenna about sending in the report and felt that it would be nice to see everybody in person and give a verbal update. As I'm also kind of launching back in from maternity leave, I just wanted to make sure that I followed up and continued to be in conversation with all of you on the projects that we're doing and where funds are going. So a big portion of the funds that, as Linda's mentioned, the first $5 million had been spent that utilized purchasing of vacant land such as Vesper Lane, Bartlett Road, Orange Street, and Amelia Drive. A really exciting part of that is we've issued an RFP, a request for proposals to develop that, and we've received a bid back. It just ended about 2 weeks ago, so finance is still reviewing that bid.
Is that a bundled bid?
It's a.
All properties?
Yeah, so
That's
they'll be
all of them?
developing all three
Okay.
properties. And it's about 60 units in total. I haven't been able to see the proposal until finance goes through it, but we're working through putting together an RFP committee to review it. And our goal is to award that bid by the end of June, so that we can start working through that process. So it'd be really exciting, to see who's the bidder and what the project is. But what I've heard from finance is that it was a really strong bid so far, so.
Is it a known entity or somebody new coming in?
I don't have any information from finance yet.
Well, they would have posted the register of proposals. It's been received, right?
It's been received.
Yeah, so they would have had to post register of
Yes,
proposals on.
Okay, 'cause
Yeah.
they were just double checking.
You don't post the award until all the evaluations have taken place, but the register, you do open and see who
Who it is.
Who it is.
Yeah,
and then you don't look at anything else till you go.
they had to, it's public record once they've opened the bid.
Okay. Oh,
So it'd be interesting if you just let Glenna know if it's somebody, known entity or somebody new coming in, because you know, somebody new coming in doesn't understand the Nantucket premium, especially with the tariffs. We don't know what's gonna happen with construction materials.
We do.
We do, but we hope we don't.
Not necessarily, I mean, there's, a lot of the stuff we get is from Canada, or from Maine, so a lot of the framing stuff. So some of the shingles and some of the.
Yeah, I sent my
exterior,
guy up to Maine to get
Yes.
shingles.
that all comes from Canada, and that, but they put a hold on those two specific things in this first round of tariffs.
Well, it's still got a 10% on it,
Yeah, but.
On shingles?
on anything coming from Canada at the
Yeah,
moment.
shingles and this certain type of sheeting, zip wall, you see it all over the green
Yeah.
siding, you see that.
Oh, yeah.
That is expensive, but it comes from Canada, and those two things were exempted in the first round of tariffs.
Hmm.
So,
Well,
but
see.
that could change
Yeah.
in 5 minutes, so,
Yeah,
but right now, we haven't seen a spike yet
Right.
in construction.
well, strand board's coming out of New Hampshire and stuff, so
Yeah.
I sent him up there to get that too.
Most of the dimensional lumber we get, framing lumber is from Maine.
Right. I'm just
from the United
concerned
States.
as a sidebar issue, and I said this in meeting yesterday, that I've had the experience already where American-made products are being tariff increased.
Yeah,
So there's gonna be some fraud.
same thing that happened
Yeah.
with COVID. I mean,
Right.
plywood went from $30 a sheet to 85.
Over 100.
And
in
it
some
never
cases.
went back down when it should have. They kept it there as long as they could until
Yeah.
it finally.
But the
went
point
back
is, you know, even if it's from Maine, check. Why
Right,
is
there's
this
a
more?
lot of,
We're sending a bunch of trucks up into Maine.
down.
That's
So
what's
We're
happening.
gonna see some of that. You're
Yeah.
right.
Anyway, sorry to.
Okay,
So-
great.
it's all part of housing.
Yeah.
So we've been working towards utilizing the funds of the second $5 million. So what Brian Turbot does is typically spend cash, and then when he's ready to issue a bond, that's when he actually goes out and borrows. So he hasn't actually borrowed the funds for that second $5 million tranche yet.
He did go to the select board. I was at that meeting. They did go to the select board and inform them that they are going to be eating into that second 5 million.
Yes, and so what those projects are Habitat for Humanity's Waite Drive. They're developing 6 homes for homeownership. If you drive by, about four of them are almost done. They're kind of doing the final painting and trims on them. The way that they did it is there's 3 sites. They're doing 2 single-family homes, a duplex, and 2 single-family homes. They built all 4 single-family homes over this past year, and then they're starting now on the duplex. We just broke ground on the duplex. Once that site stabilized, then they can move in the recipients of the single-family homes. So even though they're complete, they will be vacant for a little while they're stabilizing the site.
And for purposes of CPC, we can't be involved in anything that's more than 100% of median. So obviously Habitat is 50%, so there's never any question when
Or
money.
80, right?
80.
80,
Up
there's
to-
never any question
Yeah.
that CPC funding for Habitat, which we told them to go to the trust and not come back here all the time, is okay. It's just the other funding for the development of the other things, which are not all, there's no workforce housing in there too.
Yeah,
It's
so
over 150%.
anything that is where we utilize our $6.5 million override and other debt exclusions to create attainable housing that's over 100%.
But our money can go towards paying for infrastructure and site preparation, because the component of these 3 developments has the 100% or less. So it gets a little complicated because people don't understand the 100% cap. But we can do infrastructure for an entire development. Because it does have that component, so we just don't only do one part of the development for infrastructure, so there's a large infrastructure cost on the three of them. So a lot of that money is gonna go to that and then go to the 80%, the 100% or less units, so it's interesting how our funds work with the trust funds that are unencumbered by our restrictions.
And that's really the story I've been trying to explain when people say like, why are you going back for more CPC? Or you went to town meeting last year and asked for a $45 million authorization. And we use both of these in collaboration to get the success that we've had. In the last 5 years, we've added, I wrote it down. We have added 206 units to our shy list. And that is a direct result of having the cash available to be able to utilize and be a part of the project. So Richmond, we were able to work to buy down in multiple units of their development. And so almost half of their development is income restricted and half is market, whereas if they did the typical 40B route and what their zoning is, that would have only been 25%. So we were able to go in and create more options for our community.
Is that 206 actual or is that Surfside Crossing as well?
That's not Surfside
So it's
Crossing.
it's
Yeah,
not
there's no-
punitive,
there's
it's
no stick
actual
in the
beds and
ground.
heads.
Yeah, there's no stick in the ground on that because it's still encumbered. My only question on Richmond is that, okay, we bought down a bunch. I've got my 8 units in my, the front grouping, the single family homes. They have almost doubled everybody else's rent in there.
Mhm.
Is there any possibility of buying in more? Because some of the people in there went from like 2001 to 4,000
My
to
cousin's got a
6,000 a
mark,
month.
an
This is
affordable
insane.
unit, his is unaffordable now.
Yeah, it's becoming insane in there. So I didn't know if you'd had conversations with Phil and those guys to see if there's more we can do to buy down more of those units, because when you got a 2-bedroom unit, and you're paying $5,000 a month, you can't do that. So where are those people gonna go?
I'm definitely happy to have that conversation. Richmond has been one of our strongest partners of really working with us to maintain our shy list. We've recently just approved the Meadows 1. They're adding their first development that they did,
Yeah.
which originally didn't have any income restricted units. It's now going to have income restricted units. So I'm definitely happy to have that
Yeah,
conversation.
have the
and see-
conversation, because people that thought, were desperate, have an apartment there, and then they got a third or a double or 25% even. It's putting that unattainable for the people that are living there, and we don't want that in those units.
And one of the biggest challenges I've seen in the last couple of years is our area median income continues to go up,
That's an
and
issue.
that makes the rent go up. And so,
You can't do anything about that.
yeah,
That's my cousin's case, so he understands it, but it's still like, it's brutal.
and so even as an example, 2 years ago, they did a lottery. They showcased what their rents are gonna be because they have to put it in all the marketing materials. They said, this is what your rent's gonna be for a 1-bedroom. Somebody moved in, got what was on the marketed level, but between the lottery and when they moved in, they'd had a rent increase and that person was exempt. And then the next year, there was another increase, and because area median income had gone up significantly in those 2 years, he saw almost a 20% increase.
Yeah.
And this is an affordable unit, and it really was just the calculation. There was nothing that changed on
Yeah.
Richmond's side. They weren't, price gouging. It was just how the federal government defined area median income. And
For
that's
Nantucket,
something
yeah.
that we couldn't control.
It's insanity, because you may not have a job that is keeping pace with the income raises on this stuff. So you get nailed in your unit and you can't
You
afford your
definitely won't.
unit.
I mean, paying
Crazy.
increases when they come every couple of years are like maybe 2, maybe 5% at best. So no way.
I know at the housing authority, our rents have had to go up because we have a state and we have a federal, we have 2 different units there. And we're worried about the federal because we're subsidized. These people in the housing authority are subsidized. And now we're worried about the federal side and what's gonna happen to our people. So, and we've also prohibited rental assistance from helping people in the housing authority because they're already subsidized. But they may need rental assistance. So all these things that are happening for the next unfortunate 3.5 years are going to affect not just you guys, but also the housing authority and our people in the housing authority. So this has got far reaching
A
effects.
compound effect.
Yeah,
And that's really why going to the town meeting, we're trying to get as much information out as, you know, we want to talk about our successes, the heads and beds. We also want to talk about, you know, what is the next 5 to 10 years going to look like? It's not going to become easier to own or rent on Nantucket. And there has to be intervention to fund some of this gap. With Habitat for Humanity, their model previously was they kind of built the home, whatever it cost to build it. That's what they sold it for. They had a lot of donated materials and labor.
not now.
Now they have to be on the SHI list. I mean, it's important for us to maintain our SHI list. They've been helping us stay in safe harbor in order to get town land. And with that, the state restricts how much they can sell it for. So even if they built it for 400,000, and that would be an amazing case if they did, they can only sell it for 285,000. And so no matter what they do, they're always gonna need this subsidy to maintain that price point.
It's a huge gap.
And it's only growing, so these units that they're building right now are around 600 to 700,000 to build, and then they can only sell it for under 300,000. So that subsidy is needed by the trust to maintain that affordability
Not
level.
everybody understands that gap.
Mhm.
They think that Habitat covers everything and they sell it for what they build it for, and then there's no gap between construction costs and what you're allowed to sell it for. They don't understand that. And we brought this up in the past when you guys represented in front of us, that the public is not aware of where these funds are going.
Mhm.
What the successes have been, whether they're CPC funds or the 6.5. They don't understand any of that stuff. They particularly don't understand the gap on Habitat, and why Habitat continues to need money. That stuff has to get out in the public, and you've got less than a month to get it out.
They have 2 weeks.
Yeah,
So the trust has formed a communications subcommittee, and that's gonna be an ongoing committee that we wanted to prepare for town meeting, but then we realized we need to just have this be year round and making sure that we're putting ads out there, editor, letters to the editor, getting our information out there. And that's really where we started to dig into making sure our website is up to date with everything, you know, getting the word out. I went to Rotary last week and spoke at Rotary Club about our successes and challenges, and we're just gonna keep doing that as much as we can, because we've been so narrow and focused of like, we just want to get things done and
Yeah.
keep adding to our SHI list and stay in safe harbor, that we forgot to look up and say, hey, look at everything we did. So Meg Trudell and I recently submitted a report to the state where we saw that from 2020 to 2025, we added those 206 units. And I was like, whoa, pause, that's amazing that we added 206 units
especially during COVID.
during a tough time to our subsidized housing inventory list. If,
By units, do you mean beds or actual dwellings?
so dwellings, so that's even
Okay.
more.
Yeah,
That's a
beds.
lot.
It's a lot.
Well,
of
you
beds.
should break it down into beds.
I'm trying. It's-
If you can.
it's- Yeah, it's in our spreadsheet, so.
The legal number of beds.
I'm waiting to get some of that, cause like I know Habitat for Humanity's bed number, but some of the market rate units for Richmond, I just have to figure out.
Yeah.
But I think you need, in order to get support at town meeting, because a lot of us already have our homes, those of us who are, you know, retired, I'm never gonna retire, but over 60, who built our homes a long time ago. I was 83. When our taxes go up, our impact on us is very, very hard. Well, thank you. I feel like I got hit over the head with a bat, but it's very hard for us to keep our homes as we age.
Mhm.
Because the taxes to afford other people to have affordable housing are going to kill us. I can't absorb $600 extra a year. I can't do it.
Right,
My taxes have doubled in the last 3 years because of the housing stuff. So you've got to consider, you're gonna have to beg the town to raise the year-round tax exemption for year-rounders up to 30 or 40, we can go to 50. In
So
order for us to offset what we all year-rounders
Mhm.
have to pay on our own homes, because our assessments are going up. So we're getting whacked several times, those of us who are already here, and I have an affordable apartment, it's only $1,200 a month. I've been offered 4 times that. So it's, you know, there's an offset, but in order for us to support it at town meeting, you're going to have to give and take here, but
Right.
you're also gonna have to explain how important this funding is and how many people have benefited. And I don't think there's been enough of that out in the public.
no, I agree, and I mean, we bought our home in 2021 and we've seen the price of our taxes go up and
And
our
you've got 2
insurance.
dwelling units there, don't you?
Insurance is a killer.
Insurance is.
Insurance is a killer. Yeah.
And so
double
You
what
know,
we pay in Vermont. Yeah.
we wanna look at that year-round exemption, and part of that is, the
Just got
state
my-
just allowed it to go up to 50%
50%.
through the seasonal communities designation,
Yeah.
so at this town meeting, we have an article to opt in to the seasonal communities designation.
It's gonna help us in a lot of
And then
ways.
once we opt in, we can start to figure out how to utilize some of these
As long
other.
as that's not
sections.
federally funded.
It's not federally.
Not,
You know, if I could just say, today I learned something I didn't know, and it's Richmond. Like, there's such bad karma with them and the rent increases. And when you explain it, that they're one of your best, colleagues in the housing industry. I was like, what? Based on what I'm hearing, they're the devil, but that's,
They've been a really great partner.
that's a huge, disparity in information that's running around out there. So kudos on the communications committee. 'Cause
well, one of
that-
the worst parts of this whole, affordable housing thing is that they don't count dwelling units, your home ownership.
Mhm.
So in our case, we've got 36, I think, of the ones I'm building in the front section that we bought from Rich. We've got, I think, 8 units, and only the 8 units count, not the rest of them. But if you have a rental situation like Richmond, where they have 80% or whatever, they all count because they're all rental. So there's got to be a movement at the
Right,
state to count individual home ownership units, because we have quite a few of those and we're getting more, especially through Habitat, but it's not fair
right.
that the whole thing doesn't get counted if their home ownership, which is everybody's ideal dream, is not to rent forever, is to actually home ownership.
Mhm.
Like in the housing authority, we have several units that are homeowner, we gave the land to Habitat. And it's like, they don't count. They're in the housing authority complex, but they don't count. Now, that's stupid. So something has to happen. I don't know if there's a move afoot or having conversations up there
There's
about
really
that.
no appetite at the state to look at the chapter 40B law. They see it as a really helpful tool across the state. They don't see the challenges that it brings to Nantucket. I think that's when people feel like there hasn't been progress, they're focusing on home ownership.
Right.
And I agree, we haven't been able to focus on home ownership because we needed to stay in safe harbor, and we have a path to get to 10% in the next couple of years. And once we're there, then that's where the other funding sources can come in and we can start to look at home ownership.
But you
The
need to say,
Affordable Housing Trust just,
you need to say that though, that, everybody's, as you said, is concentrated on the rentals. But when you put out your information, you need to say how many more
Mhm.
are home ownership that are also affordable, that have
Yes.
covenants on them. That piece has been missing.
Mhm. And that's where we are putting together a total number of deed restricted units, so you can see what's on the SHI list, which is our 405 units, and then there's about 100 of other deed restricted units, which is between 100% and 240%.
Yeah, the workforce housing has added a bunch after the 150.
And so we've been really successful in adding things, and like I said, we've just failed to be able to let the community know what we've done.
Yeah.
But the Affordable Housing Trust is in the process of closing on a property. It was an estate planning property at 10 Parker Lane and 55 Fairgrounds Road. And that's a 2-acre parcel, and we see this as a long-term strategic buy specifically for home ownership.
Does she have a life rate?
She has a life right on the
Okay.
current property. And then we have rights to be able to develop over time.
One's vacant.
We have rights to develop closest to Fairgrounds even while
Yeah.
it's still in use, and then we can start
Cause I
to,
did the one on the opposite side of Parker. That whole thing was mine, but those are all market rates.
those are all market rates, and that's really. And no offense, that was really, I think, what prompted the homeowner was, she saw houses going for 3.5 million and said, how are teachers gonna live here?
Well, he was really upset before he passed away. I think this is something he worked out with her.
Yeah.
Before he passed away, late last year. He was a great guy.
And so they started to say, how can we make sure that there's a year-round deed restriction? And so as part of their estate planning, they had the conversation with us, and we were like, this is exactly what we could do, is plan with you. So, when you say government takes time, like we're not even planning to break ground on this for several years. And so I know that people are gonna say, why did you do this now? And you're not gonna build it.
Because
But
there's no more
it's a
open land in the
strategic-
middle, in the R10 district, in the middle of the island. Where are you gonna find that unless you
Right.
take somebody's house out?
And so it's just a strategic plan to purchase it now and be able to build later. and be able to use partnerships like perhaps in the future Habitat for Humanity could build a couple of 80% units. Perhaps the Land Trust builds a couple at 240%, and you have this range of mixed income homeownership
I
opportunities.
still think we need to go back and talk to Irene Schreiber. That's 3.5 acres. Rugged Road.
Rugged Road.
Yeah, I've been talking to her about it for quite a while, but I think we need to have another conversation over there.
Where is that?
Rugged
Across from
Road.
School?
No, Rugged Road,
Oh, right.
Little
Beyond,
way down.
Beach Plum,
Gotcha.
the next, actually. the
She's like a
next
little
one.
farm and there were chickens and stuff back there.
But she, her husband's passed away and now she's got 3.5 acres, which we've been unable to.
Nice piece of property, pretty,
Oh, it's beautiful in there.
and mostly open land to the,
So there are little pieces around
Hmm.
where I can always put you in touch with people. I'm very close to her. So there's things around, but now, as we know with the fairgrounds, it's all gonna be billion-dollar homes. I mean, we don't need any more of those in mid-island where everybody lives. The year-round population lives within a mile of that Stop and Shop.
And that's really what we're excited. The state is getting close to releasing their guidelines on the year-round housing deed restriction. And once they release it, we'll be able to see how we can
You take
implement
ours?
it. The trust put together a pilot program, which has an income restriction on a year-round deed restriction. So it has 2 restrictions. That is getting ready to be released June 1st. And so what that helps is kind of 2-sided. You can either stay in your current home and put a deed restriction on, and that cash can help you pay for the taxes and insurance and costs of living in your home. And then when you sell it, it has to stay year round.
In
and
perpetuity?
affordable. In perpetuity. Or on the other side, say you're getting ready to sell, you found a potential buyer, they could put the year-round deed restriction on it as down payment assistance.
what's the threshold? Is it attainable or,
Attainable, 240%.
okay,
So the increase, and.
how will you value that? Do you have a formula?
Yeah, so we use the same one as Housing and Check-It and the EOH, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. And so the max sale price is about 1.2, but that might have changed this past week with
Right.
HUD increase.
How is that different from that crazy thing that Act Now did?
It's taking it over a little bit, right?
Well, Act Now did lease for locals, and that was to provide a
Did you do it?
subsidy.
I took 2 SDRs and made them into year round.
Nice.
Well, see, I don't qualify, even though my apartment is,
So,
is restricted by me,
so your.
1/3 the rate.
Yeah, so there, so I always say there's 3 Cs in housing. There's, you conserve what's already year round, which is your example. You convert a short-term rental or underutilized structure into year round, or you have to build. That's how we're gonna add to our
Construct.
housing.
Because right now I don't qualify because it's already an existing unit.
So, and that is a program in Provincetown that the state is allowing us to adopt. And I've been working with Rob Ranny, to be able to put that into implementation. We're hoping for the fall town meeting, if not next spring. But.
So the
they have a
taxes would go down on
program.
that property too, right?
The program is very similar to the year-round,
Exemption.
exemption.
Right.
Where you would get a discount for renting
But I
year-round.
wouldn't get the money that he got. For converting an STR, because I don't have
No,
an
I
STR.
thought you said there was for your deed restriction, there's a cash.
The deed restriction, there's a cash
Right.
thing.
So
People don't wanna do
eventually
that.
I would
It's a
qualify to
cash
restrict
payment.
that apartment because it's been restricted since the day I built it.
So once this program, to explain the program a little bit, is that basically you and your tenant would go into the assessor's office, fill out an application that says, I rent this to, at an affordable rate. Your, tenant would have to qualify that they, meet the income
If he's
restrictions.
retired at 60, yeah.
So most likely meets the income restrictions, and then you would get a tax abatement.
Nice.
But I wouldn't get paid to restrict it by covenant, by deed.
So
Like he
it,
did.
it wouldn't be, he didn't get it in perpetuity. He got a
No,
one-time cash.
Well, then the
payment.
second year, they renewed it, but only half as much, 50%.
But what
So
I
you can
I
opt
wouldn't
out.
qualify for any money,
You can opt out.
just
Yeah,
tax.
But I didn't, I stayed in.
Right.
I
So
kept,
then
See,
the
that's an
second-
inequity here.
I kept the
Well,
same
they're
tax.
different programs, and each one kind of has the pros and cons of each.
Yeah.
And so there's, I think.
But you're
there's
looking for
different
options. This is the
right.
point that I want to get back to, so
Yeah,
you can
we gotta
continue your
have
presentation, because I feel like we keep derailing you. So
It's okay.
it's great that you guys are looking for all these thinking outside
Ways
the
of doing
box or adapting things that exist and have succeeded elsewhere
Yeah.
that are somewhat comparable to us. So that we're not just building. I like the 3 Cs. I think you should definitely highlight
Yeah.
that when you present to the town. I mean,
Yeah.
this goes back to neighborhood first.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's really what we've been looking at, is how do you look at converting existing year-round, or sorry, existing underutilized into year-round housing, and so there's been opportunities recently where the trust has purchased properties. Either to keep them in year-round or to make sure that they stayed year-round. And then we have the purchase of Parker Lane as well, and then how do we keep year-round units year-round, and that's really where this deed restriction program is.
Well,
gonna
don't
come in.
forget those of us like myself, there are quite a few of us, I can name 5 right now, that are keeping our apartments, our garage apartments, our cottages. But way below market rate at affordable rates, because they were, for the grace of God, go the rest of us.
So,
And we get nothing for it. We're just doing it
Because
because
goodness of your heart.
out of the goodness of our hearts kind of thing, and one of which is on the housing trust. She does the same thing. But we're getting ignored by all these wonderful little things going around out there, but there are quite a few of us out there that are doing it voluntarily and getting no break for doing it voluntarily. Don't forget about those of us who are here.
Why don't you write a letter to the editor saying,
Well, I've talked to some of the select board about it, not Tom necessarily, but it's just like, hey, guys.
But I
The
think-
rest of us are out here and you're doing absolutely nothing for us, so don't lose track of that.
Yeah, but I think that's what Eleanor was just saying, like, we're trying to put together a toolbox of many different options, and it's not gonna be like a one size fits all, so lease to locals, you know. It was a pilot program, we're in our first official year of it going through housing Nantucket and then the town. You know, if our $6.5 million override comes into question in 2 weeks, that program might cease to exist, and then there's that, you know, we're trying out different things and seeing
what sticks?
Yeah.
What works.
Throw everything against the wall.
is what.
the covenant
The
program,
Covenant program is still going, that's through Housing Nantucket, they have over 100 units that they've added.
And I've had to sign every one of them, because the housing authority actually owns
so
the
pretty
covenant
successful
program.
there.
But that doesn't go on the shy list.
It doesn't go on the shy list,
Still good.
one of the challenges with that over the last couple of years is the rise in building costs, and so they have their max sales price, and so it's hard to build.
But you can
something.
convert.
Yes, so you can,
Yeah.
Existing, yeah.
use existing,
Yeah,
which there
existing.
just haven't been a ton on the market. There's one very successful one that they had this past year, was where the current owner wanted to downsize, so they were able to stay living in their existing home and covenant that, and then sell the rest of their vacant land at a market rate. So you can, the covenant can either be the thing that's sold or the person can stay in it.
I've
So
seen some really creative, and I did, that was on Hooper Farm. I've seen some really creative things going on. When I'm moving houses and stuff and splitting, subdividing stuff, because I do all that stuff for free for people, but. I've seen some really creative stuff where the person actually qualified, stayed in their own home and sold the vacant lot like Hooper Farm, because I did that one. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on out here, where you can still get the benefit of your market rate and still carve off a piece, because you only have to have 20% of this square footage of the other lot in order to subdivide. There's all kinds of restrictions, but it works for everybody. And we signed the covenants up to 150%, guys, not just 100%, which is what our limitation is. The covenant runs up to 150.
Mhm.
We have had another put on your list. We've talked about raising the covenant higher. Because these people that have $1 over, or their circumstances change, and you've seen this, where they qualified, they're online, they're going, they're great. And their number's been drawn, and all of a sudden they get to the point of verification. And they got a raise. And they've been bounced out of the program. That's happened more than you think it's happened. And that's the kind of thing, if you go up to 200% with a covenant, that gives you a little wiggle room on people that have changes in personal
Hey, Linda,
circumstances.
she has a meeting. So
I know, I just wanted to add that to your list.
let's respect her time
Come
here.
Talk to the housing authority about raising the covenant limit.
Madam Chair,
Yeah,
may I make a point about that? I'd actually like the trust to work with Housing Nantucket to study possibly everything up to or including not having an income cap and just restrict it to 10 months. And, you know, islanders are islanders, and let them, you'd have to deal with windfall provisions and all those sort of things. But the covenant program is still works in some ways and is broken in others. And I think that's something that we as at the trust and other entities should take a look at with Housing Nantucket. So that's something I've been thinking a lot about. Also, there is some question about in the seasonal communities designation with the ADU part, whether you could condo off an existing as long as it meets the square footage part, and condo it off. Like if the property that I live on has a main house and then a little cottage that's under 900 square foot, could you condo that off and sell it? And if you deed restricted it at whether it has an income restriction or not,
You can't
that would
restrict
be
ADUs.
You can't
You
touch.
can't
the
restrict ADUs in any way.
Right now, you can't touch them.
Until they change the
You can
statute.
rent it for $10,000 a week right now if you want to.
Well,
That's
well,
the
the
problem.
point is we don't have the guidance from EOHLC yet on what we can and can't do. So I would just underline also that seasonal communities designation Article 82 is extremely important for us, and I hope everybody will get up and support that at
Yeah.
town meeting. That is highly, as Christy pointed out, evolving, and we'll see what the final guidance comes out later this year. Cape and Islands is profoundly unattainable, unaffordable, and a lot of the other communities are catching up to us, although we remain the outlier of all outliers. Also, Senator Sear is the chair of the Housing Committee, Joint Housing Committee. That is really good for us. He understands the nature of the issues here as much as anybody. And something that I've requested for select board, and I think the trust is on this already, is kind of the future of affordable housing and having a strategic planning session with the planning board, AHT, and select board. And you know, I would highly encourage if we do that, if we can get everyone's schedules together for members of the CPC to join us at that at some point. And then there are other stuff like I mentioned, covenant, and whether Tucker and the land trust take off and all those things. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of interesting things, as Christy said, tools in the toolbox that are sort of coming. And because of the nature and of exactly how acute the issue is on Nantucket, we've all and it is really complicated to explain, but the housing office and everybody's been working really hard to try and alleviate these problems as best as possible.
Thank you for that. The only caveat I have is that the Housing Authority owns the covenant, not Affordable Housing Trust Fund and not Housing Nantucket. The Housing Authority is the one who implemented the covenant. We own it. It's in the bylaw. The Housing Authority has to buy into changes to the covenant. And I've been on this at the Housing Authority for some time about increasing them, the 150 to 200, even when Norman Chalecki was still on it with me. But there's been resistance. So if you open-end it, that changes the zoning bylaw. It changes the covenant program beyond what we envisioned. And there may be pushback on not having a cap on the covenant, that just that one program of the covenant. So I wouldn't go running around saying
Madam
that
Chair.
open-end it though.
Madam Chair, I am just bringing something up for discussion. I am not floating that as a
Yeah.
policy or it's something they should do. I'm just thinking in keeping with if the year-round if a year-round deed restriction is 10 months, then it's 10 months, and then everything else can be studied around that. And what the income restrictions are. I highly acknowledge what you said, and the Housing Authority, et cetera, should be brought into this. My only point is that the covenant doesn't work any longer because of the numbers, the nature of the market in many ways. And that's something we should all be looking at together because it is another tool in the toolbox. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And I do think it needs to be adjusted. I think that's gotta be pushed. Okay, anything else you want to add, or did we
Just
already
looking
derail you
into-
enough?
No, just trying to wrap up kind of, a lot of questions have been coming in to our office asking where are we gonna utilize the next $5 million bonding authorization. And as I kind of touched on, it's the future project. So you kind of want to have this tool available so that when a project comes up or a program idea, comes up, we have the money to be able to say, yes, let's go do it. We are very excited to hear about year-round deed restrictions and what that might look like. Might be able to utilize the trust funds for things, over 100% and CPC things for under 100% of AMI. Potential new affordable housing projects. So if a developer comes up with an idea or maybe it's a commercial development with housing on top. We just want to be able to be part of these conversations. And we say in every meeting, time is the killer of any deal. And if we say, oh, we have to wait till we go to town meeting and wait for approval, they're gonna say, okay, well, we're building next month and, it was good talking to you. Whereas if we can have these funds available, then we can have those conversations, and everything that this trust does over $100,000 is approved by the select board.
Yeah.
So there's checks and balances that we're not just gonna go out and spend $5 million tomorrow. It's really just to give us the ability to be flexible, create new tools, and be able to be competitive in this housing market.
Well, Tim knows, because we were the two that were on it, from when the first 5 million came in. It was very difficult to try to get some people to support the fact that it's stockpiling. So you can respond immediately and not have to wait for town meeting. I think you need to make that very clear. Because people think that you're gonna go out and spend the 5 million and there it is, there's a project, we got something online. So we know what we're doing with it. They need to understand that you don't have to go back to town meeting every time something comes up and you can respond immediately. That's how we sold the first 5 million and that's how we sold the second 5 million. Because you gotta be able to respond. So that should be like the cornerstone of your explanation to the layperson. What are you gonna spend it on? It's to stockpile it so we can spend it immediately when something is presented to us. Nothing else is gonna make sense to anybody unless you present it that way.
I like that feedback. And I look forward to hearing from you at town meeting as well.
Well, that many, sure.
She,
I've gone to
She's
50
very
years of
quiet
town
at town
meetings.
meetings.
There are 50 years of town meetings I've gone to, and I haven't missed a town meeting.
how many?
50. You've gone to whatever, but I've gone to 50 of them.
Wow. Well, I just wanted to thank you guys, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, this has been very helpful.
And I plan on
Yeah.
doing this. I'll make sure I'm in touch with Glenn. I'll come back every quarter and
That's great.
Thanks.
give an update.
Thank
When's your
you.
next presentation to the select board?
That's a good question. We're trying to get it scheduled.
Okay.
We're hoping before town meeting, but I
Before
think it might
town
be
meeting.
right after.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Chrissy. Thank you, Glenn.
Okay, that was great. Because we need to know what's happening, because we get asked about where our funding's going and why did we give another 5 million? I wish the people that were resistant to it were at this meeting. They're not here. Now we have fund requisitions. We've got Nantucket Interfaith, 56,727. FY 25, we have Interfaith, 46,317. FY 24, NHA Fair Street Research Library, 59,797.23. I can sign those, don't I? NHA Candle Factory, this is going along very well, by the way, the back wall. 522,972.50 FY 25, and the NHA Old Mill. I'm all over it. 59,200. We've stopped that project at the moment until the woman has come in who's running it, Amy Boyce, who is a historic millwright, is actually finally gave me a whole rundown so I can go get a thing from the HCC and from the building department to continue it, which is why you haven't seen any work going on up there right now, because they have got to get a grip on the process. And that's what we're doing right now. So this is the initial payment for her services. And she's phenomenal. She finally gave us like a 20-page report, which I've turned into the HDC in the building department. So that's the story on that one. Anybody have any questions on the rest of them?
Wait, so we're approving consulting fees?
She's the millwright. She's actually running the show and doing
She's the GC?
yeah, she's managing.
I thought we
Everything.
weren't,
We have to on those projects.
but is that part of what's been
Yes,
documented?
her expertise, she's the expert on the site,
Is that documented in our approval? I
Yes.
know we had lots of discussions
Yeah.
about not including.
because they can't manage that project. She's the one who takes a look, piece of the look at the wood.
I understand
and says,
that.
You gotta fix that.
I understand.
But remember when we were cutting stuff, we cut. out
Yeah, but she's not
supervision.
that's not a consultant thing that we can take out of that one. And we did the same thing with the wall in the back. That was an engineer involved in that.
Okay, I just hope we're being consistent.
Yeah. So anybody want to make a motion on these 5?
Motion to approve these 5 fund requisitions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Tim seconded. All those in favor, Tim,
Aye.
John,
I,
Eleanor,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Steve? I know he's there. We can see him curling.
Aye.
Good.
There he is.
While he's driving. Any old business? None. Anybody new business? Any other business from anybody? Steve, anything?
No, not today.
Okay, Tom?
No.
Okay, great. Somebody want to make a motion to adjourn at 10:49?
So moved.
Someone made that motion. All those in favor? Oh, second, Tim? Okay. All those in favor, Tim,
Aye.
John,
I.
Eleanor? Aye. Tom,
Aye.
Steve?
Aye,
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
thanks.
Thanks.
See you later.